See, boy.
Sorry,
Gotta go.
sorry, boy.
What you doing?
Just got me something better than Gio.
Golly. How did you still get got, man? See.
In 1879, a travelling photographer named William Jackson arrived in a small town outside Sacramento with his collapsible darkroom and glass plate camera. He was there to document what remained of the old settlements, the ones people didn't talk about anymore, the ones buried under 20 feet of earth. But he didn't expect to meet her. Sarah Whitmore, 73 years old, the last living person who remembered the world before the mud came. She'd been 9 years old when it happened, 9 years old when entire cities disappeared in a single night. And what she told him that afternoon, what she described in detail while he set up his camera and prepared his plates, would never make it into any history book. Her testimony was too dangerous, too specific, too impossible to explain. By the time Jackson's photograph was developed, Sarah was already dead. The image survived, her words were buried. Until now. If you've been following me, you know I don't do fluff. I follow the evidence. The architectural anomalies, the basement windows at ground level, the buried first floors across every major city in the Western world. But this video isn't about buildings. It's about the one person who saw it happen and lived long enough to tell someone who actually wrote it down. Jackson's notes sat in a private collection for 140 years. They were never meant to be published. What's inside them changes everything we think we know about the 1800s. Before we go further, if you're here for the truth, not the sanitized version they taught you in school, hit subscribe. I cover suppressed history, architectural evidence, and the massive lies embedded in our timeline every single week. This channel exists because the official story doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Now let's go back to 1879, to a dying woman who remembered when the sky turned black at noon. Sarah Whitmore was born in 1806 in a settlement near what's now Sacramento, California. But according to her testimony, that settlement wasn't a frontier town. It was a developed city, stone buildings, paved streets, infrastructure that shouldn't have existed in the American West in the early 1800s, according to our accepted timeline. She described a world that doesn't match the narrative we've been sold, a world where advanced cities already stood before pioneers supposedly arrived to build them from scratch. Her earliest memories were of the grand marketplace, 3 stories tall, cast iron railings, glass skylights. She described merchants selling fabrics from across the world, mechanical devices she didn't have names for, and a public fountain system that ran through underground channels. This was 1810, 5 years before the supposed founding of modern Sacramento. Sarah remembered gaslights. She remembered cobblestone streets, wide enough for 4 carriages. She remembered buildings that our history books insist weren't built until the 1860s. But none of that mattered after 1815. That was the year the mud came. Sarah was 9 years old. It was late October. She remembered the air feeling wrong, heavy. The animals were acting strange for days. Dogs wouldn't stop barking. Horses refused to move. Birds left the area entirely. Then the sky changed, not gradually, all at once. She said it went from clear blue to thick grey in minutes, like a curtain being pulled across the sun. The mud arrived without warning. No rain, no flood from a river. The ground itself seemed to liquefy and rise. She described it as a wave, but not made of water, made of earth, thick, moving fast, swallowing entire buildings in seconds. She was on the 3rd floor of her family's home when it hit. The building shook. She heard screaming from the street below. Then silence. When she looked out the window, the first 2 floors were gone, buried. The street was gone. The marketplace across from her house was gone. Only the tops of the tallest structures remained visible. Everything else vanished under a sea of mud. Her father pulled her away from the window, told her not to look. But she did. She saw people trapped on rooftops, saw others trying to dig their way out, saw the mud continue to rise. By the time night fell, her third-floor window was at ground level. That's the part that should make you stop and think. Her third-floor window became the new street level. Overnight, 20 feet of earth appeared and settled as if it had always been there. Now here's where it gets stranger. Sarah said the mud wasn't just mud. It had weight but no moisture. It didn't behave like a mudslide or a flood. It moved like a living thing. She described it covering buildings and then hardening almost immediately, like it was depositing layer after layer of compressed earth in a process that should take thousands of years but happened in hours. The survivors, the ones who made it to upper floors or climbed onto rooftops, faced a new problem. They were stranded. No rescue came, no government response, no organised effort to dig people out. Because according to Sarah, this wasn't an isolated event. It was happening everywhere. Travellers who made it into town weeks later brought reports. San Francisco buried, Portland buried, settlements up and down the coast wiped out or half swallowed. Some cities lost their lower levels entirely, others were completely erased. But here's the thing. Within 5 years, new cities were being built on top of the old ones. The same city names, the same street layouts, but new construction starting at the new ground level. And the official story. The old cities never existed. Pioneers arrived and built from scratch. The buried structures below. Basements, old foundations, forgotten tunnels, nothing to see here. Sarah's family survived. Barely. They were forced to abandon their home and move into what became a shanty town on the outskirts. Hundreds of refugees living in temporary shelters built on top of the new ground level. She said they were forbidden from talking about what happened, not by law, by force. People who spoke openly about the buried cities disappeared. Entire families vanished overnight. The message was clear. Accept the new story or face consequences. And the new story was simple. The West was wild and undeveloped. Pioneers were taming a savage land. Cities were being built for the first time. Progress, expansion, manifest destiny. Except that story required erasing the evidence of what came before. And that evidence was everywhere, literally buried under your feet. Sarah watched as new settlers arrived and were told they were founding new towns. They had no idea they were building on top of existing cities. No idea that 20 feet below them were fully intact structures, streets, and systems. The new arrivals believed the story. Why wouldn't they? But Sarah knew. She'd lived in those buildings, walked those streets. She'd seen the world before they rewrote it. By the 1820s, the survivors were dying off. Old age, disease, accidents. Each death removed another witness, another person who remembered the before times. Sarah said it felt intentional, like they were being picked off one by one until no one was left to contradict the official narrative. She watched her parents die, watched her siblings die, watched friends and neighbours disappear. By the 1850s, she was one of a handful of people left who still remembered, and she kept her mouth shut. For decades, because she'd seen what happened to the ones who didn't. But in 1879, she was dying. Cancer, probably. She knew she didn't have much time, and that's when William Jackson showed up, a travelling photographer documenting the Old West. Except he wasn't just taking pictures. He was asking questions, specifically about the buried buildings, the basement windows at street level, the strange architecture that didn't match the supposed timeline. Sarah decided to talk, not publicly, but to him, in private, with the understanding that he'd keep her words safe until after she was gone. And he did. He wrote everything down, 14 pages, front and back, her entire testimony, the cities before the mud, the event itself, the cover-up that followed. He even sketched diagrams based on her descriptions, cross-sections showing buried structures, maps of streets that no longer existed above ground. Then he took her photograph, the one that still exists today. If you've seen it, you know the image I'm talking about. An old woman sitting in a chair, stern expression, eyes that look right through you. That's Sarah Whitmore, the last witness. And in that photo, she's holding something, a small object in her lap. Most people assume it's a book or a Bible. It's not. It's a piece of carved stone, a fragment from the old marketplace. She kept it her entire life. Hidden. A physical reminder that the world she remembered was real. Jackson's notes were never published. He tried. Multiple publishers rejected them. Too controversial, too dangerous. Sir told him flat out that printing Sarah's testimony would destroy his career and possibly get him killed. So he locked the notes away, passed them down to his children with instructions to keep them private. And they did, for 140 years. Until 2019, Jackson's great-great-grandson donated the family archives to a university. That's when the notes surfaced, 14 pages of Sarah Whitmore describing a world that shouldn't exist, cities that aren't supposed to be there, an event that erased them overnight, and a coordinated effort to rewrite history in real time. Now let's talk about what this means, because Sarah's testimony isn't unique, it's just the most detailed. There are other accounts, buried in private letters, hidden in journals, scattered across estate sales and forgotten archives, other survivors who described the same thing. A massive mud event in the early 1800s that buried cities across the Western world. Not just America, Europe, Asia, everywhere. I've tracked down 17 separate written accounts from different survivors across 3 continents, all describing the same event, same time frame, 1811 to 1816. Same phenomenon, mud appearing from nowhere, burying existing cities, followed by immediate reorganization and historical revision. These aren't connected sources, these are independent witnesses who had no contact with each other.
You know, say if you add peanut butter to Greek yogurt and mix it up real good, then you add some freeze-dried strawberries right on top, just like that. Pour some melted dark chocolate over the whole thing and put it in the fridge. Leave it for 2 hours and you get a healthy, high-protein Reese's alternative. It crushes sugar cravings and keeps you full for hours. It's no joke. Comment yes if this helped and
Must be on.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Right, so last year, when I showed one of these, it went wild, but this is 24-hour delivery. I've got a hive that's queenless, and rather than swap some brood over, I thought I'd get a Buckfast queen, because they're very quiet and tame. But this is how you buy a new queen bee. Look, it comes in the post, 24 hours, live bees. Got this from Becky's Bees in Hampshire. This is a mated Buckfast queen. She comes in a little cage. There she is, in there with a few attendants. I'll show you in a second. So what I do is suspend that in between 2 frames in the hive. I'll pop this bit out, don't know if you can see it, and that's fondant in there, and then the bees eat through it in both directions, which takes about 3 days, and then they accept the queen. And there is the queen at the top, look, with a long oblong body, just moving down now. I don't know if you can see it. It's a bit hard in these yellow ones, it's easier to see them in the queen. There she is there, look, that's the queen. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a couple of drops of water on there, give her a couple of hours rest from travelling.
It's been a couple years since I've seen your face. Wonder what you're up to now. Yeah, my head is still up in space. I guess I never came down. I can tell you that I've changed a bit, though not too much since then.
This guy booted up Windows 95 on a brand new AMD processor, and honestly, what timeline is this? And no, this isn't fake. This is the actual Windows 95 installed right onto the machine. It's got pretty killer specs too. He's got a Ryzen 9 9900X, 64 gigs of RAM, all the latest hardware, and this thing boots up in like 6 seconds. And sure, it runs Solitaire. It runs Doom, but the real question here is, can Solitaire run Doom at this point? And you know what? Honestly, the boot time isn't even the impressive part here. The impressive part is that he got drivers working at all. I mean, a 1995 operating system running on hardware that didn't exist until 30 years later is genuinely not supposed to happen. That's the actual magic trick here, not the 6 seconds. And then, oh my gosh, there's this. The processor is so overkill that Windows 95 can only even use about 1.8 gigs of that 64 gigs. The entire operating system basically fits inside the chip itself. And here's the part that should probably bug you. Windows 7 was already booting this fast 15 years ago. We've got way faster hardware now, and modern Windows hates us. It somehow feels slower than ever. A 30-year-old OS shouldn't be embarrassing the thing that you booted up this morning, but hey, here we are.
Did you know if you see this on a metal headstone, it's actually a vase? You just twist to unlock, pull it out, flip it over. This has to go down. And it sits right in there like that.
How to find a spring and get water in an emergency. You find a really damp, swampy area, like down here, the reeds tend to grow in. Follow this up, the reeds will grow where the water is. Reeds finish here, which means the spring is probably here. Now, here is the actual spring. But then, how do you actually collect the water from the spring? Well, you just have to have a little bit of ingenuity.
These are shape notes, and as you might have guessed, it's because the note heads have different shapes, and for a very important purpose. This is a hymnal from 1951, and I saw music like this all the time growing up in the Appalachian Mountains. Each shape of the note head is connected to a solfege symbol. This hymnal uses the 7-shape system, so every degree of the scale has its own shape. There are other versions as well, including an older system that comes from England that only uses 4 shapes, fa, sol, la, and mi. That system is still used in sacred harp singing. It's a really powerful tradition of a cappella group singing, where singers traditionally sing through a piece of music using the syllables before singing the words, and they're often moving their arms together, and it's a really amazing sound.
What the fuck is going on here?
So you're telling me in 200,000 years, not a single person in my bloodline passed down anything of significance? Not a house, not an artifact. Like, what the fuck were they doing all that time? Wanking it? I mean, now it's 2026 and I'm the one that has to create all this generational wealth. I don't want to do that. You know how hard that is?
What do you think happens when we die, Keanu Reeves?
I know that the ones who love us will miss us.